If you are someone who wants to get into reading or reading fiction in particular, like I was, I genuinely do not think there could be a better book than The Palace of Illusions by Chitra Banerjee. Because what was this book? No wonder it's such a popular read, and for the right reasons. I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of the book, even if not read it yet. So, for those of you who do not know, I'll give you a little context on what the book is about. The book is essentially the retelling of Mahabharata, but from a female's perspective, the female here being Draupadi. So, growing up, we've all heard of the Mahabharata from a male's perspective, kings, warriors, sages, but rarely from a female's perspective, who was also at the center of it all. So this book changes that, and I'm really excited to share my thoughts on the book. So this is going to be a long book review. Like my pointers written on my I have all my points written on my Notion just so that I do not miss out on anything. Also, because this is my first ever book review. So, I really hope you enjoy this. And I'm so glad that you're here watching it. So, the first thing that struck me was just how gripping this book is. Like, every time I sat down to read this book, I was transported to a whole new world. The language is simple, the story just flows, and the descriptions are so vivid, so textured that you'll actually find yourself visualizing everything to a point where there'll be times you'll feel like maybe you're watching something and not reading a book. And there isn't a single moment where you'll feel like, okay, can we move on? Like, nothing drags. And this is especially important for someone who's just getting into reading. You know what I mean? The second thing that really stayed with me was just how human Draupadi is written. Like, we often grow up hearing these mythological characters described almost like they are flawless beings. But here, Draupadi is very real. She's flawed, conflicted, emotional, confused. Just like any of us. She questions her decisions, she overthinks things. One example mentioned throughout the book is her feelings for Karna despite being married to the Pandavas. Like, she knows these feelings are wrong, rationally it shouldn't even be there. But the book doesn't judge her for it and lets you as a reader sit with it. In no way am I promoting infidelity here, just to be clear, because emotions don't always follow logic. You know what I mean? The third thing that the book explores is a woman's longing for autonomy. And I don't think that's changed in a million years. If you are someone who thinks women wanting independence or the freedom to live life on their own terms or having their own space is a Western concept, or girls of today are whitewashed because they dare to take up more space, please read this book. There's a thread in this book about Draupadi wanting her own palace, designed by her, run by her on her own terms. Neither her father's palace nor her husband's palace ever truly feels like her own. She only ever feels at home in the Palace of Illusions that she gets to design and shape herself. And I remember reading that part and thinking of all the times where I have dreamed of having a space of my own and how I would shape it and how I would design it and how I would run it, what would be the rules of my house, etc. etc. Because even today, for a woman, their life moves from their father's house to their husband's house. But there's something completely different about having a space that you can call your own, where you get to make the rules, where you don't have to shrink, adjust, or accommodate, where no one else gets to tell you what to do, what not to do. That longing of Draupadi felt so current, so real. It didn't feel like I was reading about a woman from mythology. The fourth point is her relationships and how refreshingly honest they are. Like, here's what I loved. The book doesn't dress up her relationships in this grand romantic light. Her relationship with the Pandavas isn't described as some epic love story. She's a great wife, she fulfills all her duties, she cares, but she also admits that she's not deeply in love with them. No performance, no pretense, and not just with her husbands, even with her sons. She missed out on a huge chunk of their growing up years because they were in exile for a very long time, with, because of which she doesn't share this deep instinctive bond with them. And for a mother to admit such a thing is so difficult. It's the kind of honesty we've almost forgotten is okay because social media has trained us to be these perfect versions of ourselves. The one that knows the right thing to do, the right thing to say, the right emotions to feel. And the moment that someone admits to feeling something uncomfortable, something wrong, we're so quick to judge us, I mean, others and ourselves. But why? Because if Draupadi, living in a yug supposedly far better than Kali Yug, could experience so much emotional complexity and conflict, what are we expecting from ourselves? We're all humans at the end of the day. So, honestly, we gotta take it easy. Okay, this can't only be me. Raise your hand if you thought Swayamvars were this progressive pro woman concept. We all did, right? I always thought Swayamvars were empowering, where the woman got to choose her own husband. But in the book, you realize that Draupadi never gets to choose. She marries the one who wins the competition. And who sets the competition? The decision makers of the kingdom. And who benefits? The king, her father, who now has the most powerful king as his alliance. It's rooted in the same patriarchy, just dressed up differently. Revenge, karma, and justice. You know that feeling when someone wrongs you and everyone around you, or even the rational part of your brain goes, let it to karma, let God handle it, leave it up to the universe. And a part of you knows that's right. But another part of you is like, but I want the justice, but I want the satisfaction of witnessing it. I want the satisfaction of doing justice myself. So Draupadi comes to crossroads with such a feeling. Like she doesn't disbelieve in the higher power, but she also can't fully let go of her need for justice in this lifetime, in this world. She wants the very human satisfaction of vengeance. And that tension between faith and wanting to take matters into your own hands, I don't think that's changed in 1,000 years. The book also very subtly conveys that, no matter who your husband is, no matter who your father is, no matter who your partner is, what your connections are, you are ultimately alone in your own journey. And I'm pretty sure all of us have grown up hearing this, especially in India, that there are certain battles that only you can fight and you have to fight for yourself. Like Draupadi, for example, she had some really powerful people in her corner. She had God himself by her side, and yet there were certain battles that no one else could fight for her, that she had to live herself, that she couldn't escape. And from what I understand, some things are inevitable. They are meant to happen through you. Like we are the channel for certain energies to materialize. And finally, the people we put on pedestals, they were just as conflicted as us. Like growing up, every time we heard of the stories of Mahabharata and Ramayana or any other mythological story, no one would tell us about the conflicted side of these characters. Maybe our storytellers didn't know it themselves. We idealize these figures. We think they always know the right thing to do, the right thing to say, and they have their moral values in place. But this book quietly and beautifully dismantles the idea that the figures we've mythologized were somehow above human struggle. They weren't. They all had their moral gray areas, their contradictions, their moments of doing the wrong thing for what they believed were the right reasons. And there's something oddly comforting about that. Like, even if they couldn't figure it all out, maybe we're a little too hard on ourselves. And that was the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching it till the end. I'm so glad you stayed. I'd love to know your thoughts on the book. And if you've read it, and if you haven't yet, I hope this video motivates you to read it. I'd love to read all your perspectives in the comments below if you could take some time out and share it. And yeah, I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Thank you.